This poem is called This Afro Speaks. This fro you see upon my head, it's more than just a hairdo. This afro speaks of freedom. This hair is not brushed or combed into conformity or styled in complex braids. This hair is free to be, to frizz and bounce joy into a space. This is my full moon amongst the stars. It wasn't always free. I craved for hair that I could flick back, hair that would fall into my eyes. So at age 8, this fro was laden with chemicals that burn. Chemicals that made each curl conform to straightness, conform to whiteness. Chemicals that smoothed out my ethnicity and all that was unique in me. This afro speaks of unity. Papa had 22 years backyard, wooden shacks and corrid goat, jerk chicken and red stripe beer, blazing sun and tropical rain, pothole inna the road and forests full of herb, and reggae music to soothe him nerve. Papa came to London searching for streets paved with gold, invited by a government that needed post-war help to rebuild the city, invited by a government that had enslaved his ancestors, invited by a government that would keep him enslaved with continued oppression and racism. Mama was listening to reggae too. In her privileged teen bedroom, she swayed her white freckled hips, hoping to meet a black man. They were free to dance, free to date, free to love, and free to marry. These curls are an ode to their union. This afro speaks of segregation. In my lifetime, black-skinned humans treated like herd by white-skinned humans. On African land, the scars of apartheid are still raised and weeping. This afro celebrates Mandela. This afro is a little piece of Africa. The effects of colonization, slavery, genocide, apartheid are still felt by Africa's children all over the world. We are the diaspora, kidnapped to the Caribbean, kidnapped to America, kidnapped to Brazil, displaced, dishonored, disillusioned, stripped of our history, our language, our culture, our pride. This afro yearns for you, Africa. I see your smiles and your fabrics and your tribal ways. I hear your drums, I feel your rhythms. This heart dances with yours barefoot on dusty earth. I know in my heart you are home. This afro speaks of Western segregation. Doorways and benches and parts of the bus designated for the likes of us. Keep us apart from all the clean white folk. Only 60 years ago in the UK and the US, and we think we're evolved. This afro celebrates Dr. King, Malcolm X, and Angela Davis. I celebrate civil rights movements, peaceful marches, and Black Panthers raising angry protest fists on university steps, people fighting for their human rights, people fighting to be considered people. This afro speaks of slavery. Blessings to my ancestor as they stepped upon that ship, surviving horrific conditions and disease only to set off of that ship onto foreign land to work sugarcane plantations so that white folk around the world could sweeten their tea and profit off of our backs. Families ripped apart, women raped, strong men whipped into submission. The shackles came off in 1865, but still 100 years followed of KKK, segregation, humiliation, underpay, no pay, and still families ripped apart, women raped, and strong men whipped into submission. Invisible shackles remain today. Invisible shackles remain today for people of colour, for the indigenous amongst us. This Afro cries for equality and equity for brown and black-skinned hearts. This Afro prays for a world free of systemic racism, free of huge healthcare and wealth disparities, free of prisons fit to burst with my brothers and sisters, free of young black men, women, and children killed by those who are paid to protect them. My young brothers and sisters need release and recognition. They are suffering. This is post-traumatic slave disorder. We need intergenerational healing. Black, brown, and indigenous peoples are still suffering the world over. The jobs we don't get, the assumptions made, the targeting of our peoples, the taking of our land, the killings by police, the justice that seems to be reserved for white folk. This Afro speaks of diversity. It draws attention in white spaces and mostly makes smiles spread across white cheeks. The same white smiles that love black lives. Black lives on sports fields, heroes running with bulls, black lives and thunder thighs of Beyonce, 90s hip-hop idolized by lanky white dudes with wannabe swagger. This Afro is an ode to Motown and my man Marvin Gaye. This Afro is an ode to reggae music, sung through the lips of every race the world over. Anti-establishment hippies and punks, but remember, this is the music of slavery's grandchildren. If you love black lives, let them out of your Spotify playlists and TVs. Let them in to your lounge rooms. Let them in to your white lives. This Afro speaks of races blending and pots melting and times changing. This Afro speaks all of these things because we must never forget. This Afro speaks these things because without them, without slavery, without colonization, without immigration, this particular Afro wouldn't even exist. This Afro carries the trauma of its own making. Thank you.